Greetings, everyone. This is Way Off, here for the first time in a long time. A month or two, really. I guess it's not that long. I have been busy on some photographic business. My assignments are done, and I have some time to kick back and play some War Thunder. And it happens to be patch day. Or at least it was. And I am on the new map. This was my first draw from hitting the good old random battles on the new map, the Carpathian Mountains. Realistic mode with my Panzer IV Aus F2. And we're not going to focus on gameplay too much, or at least my personal gameplay, because it's a new map and I'm going to derp around. I really just want to talk about the map itself and the impressions I have from it right at this point in time. They might change later, but I wanted to do this when it is fresh in my mind, more or less. Now, Carpathian Mountains, there's a lot of it that's immediately obvious. Like, for one, we have a ton of flat ground with some undulations, and all the verticality of the map is divided into about 4 elevated spaces. Now, the flat areas, the grasslands, so far have been more or less a no man's land. The undulations will protect you to some degree like they do on Kursk. They will protect your advance to a point. However, when it comes to actually engaging with other enemies, you have to give away that advantage just to see people, and you're going to get sniped. You don't have a lot of hard cover down here. I mean, you can... There's trench works and roadways built into the flatter portions of the map. You can use the roads to get a movement advantage, but that really leaves you out in the open for the most part. And you can kind of take cover in the trenches. You can kind of go hull down. But I don't find this a huge advantage, especially in Tier 2. And I would figure this follows for Tier 3 and 4, where there are tanks in possessions of big enough guns or explosive enough ordnance to severely damage or destroy your vehicle even without getting a clear shot at its hull. I'm thinking about the SU-122 and the KV-2 in particular for this map, because everything I've seen of the SU-122 indicates that I could stare at you funny and you'd probably still explode. But apart from that, it does not seem at this point in time to be really... It doesn't seem to be a good idea to be really active on the flatlands. So this map tends to be centered around the elevated positions. And, I mean, for the most part, that's natural. I'd expect that. The elevated positions give you excellent cover and give you a wonderful overwatch of the valley. You can track movement in the valley very easily from almost any of these locations. Because even though I've said, you know, the valley is a no man's land, no one should go in it, you have to go in it. You have to be able to flank around these elevated positions. You have to get up there and engage them. And that usually means you're going to be exposed to fire in most situations. Especially because, at least in Conquest mode, given the positions of the objective points for each team, it makes sense to plan your advances either flanking around the far side of these elevated positions or going right through them. And you can take your own elevated positions on your team spawn point relatively easily, I feel. With minimal spotting, minimal fuss. But when you have to hop over to the next elevated position, you're going to run a higher risk of being spotted. And even though going around the outside seems like a good idea to a degree, I'm not sure it's always the best solution because it takes a great deal of time. And I haven't seen these maps be very time sensitive, but speeding or trying to get around the flank to launch an attack, I mean, that's time critical if you have forces in the middle of the valley or something like that. If you arrive too late, they're probably dead and you're next, because that means that the enemy teams can focus on you. So holding these elevated positions, and possibly a no-brainer, is, I think, very key to this map thus far. And I think for a lot of these elevated positions, once you hold them successfully, or you know, especially if you get up there unopposed, it's very easy to take up a defensive position within them because they seem to possess a lot of hard cover, and when they don't, they have a lot of visual cover. Not stuff that'll stop a bullet, but will make it harder to be seen, more or less. And your traditional options of possibly plotting an artillery strike or getting aircraft support in realistic, I know you can't do that in arcade, to my knowledge. I honestly do not play a lot of arcade when it comes to tanks. I don't like the aim assist in arcade mode, but you're very limited with those options. The cover is very tall. The hard cover is usually very tall. It's like castle ruins and stuff like this. And since artillery strikes are angled in from a position further back on the map, more often than not, they don't just, it's not an orbital bombardment. They're not coming straight down from the sky. They have to deal with that arc. And I think a lot of this cover is sufficiently tall enough that depending on where you are pretty much invulnerable to artillery strikes. It'll just bounce off the other side of whatever rock you were hiding behind, more or less. And aircraft are severely limited on this map, in my opinion. And we will get into that shortly, because I did end up doing a flyby of this, because I eventually do die. I'm not always the best with the Panzer IV F2. But so far, yes, it feels like you're going to focus your fight on these vertical positions. Movement in the map is going to concern taking them more than anything. And I think this would be true no matter what game mode was being played. If they plopped an objective marker in the middle of the map, it would be absolute suicide to try and take that objective flat out without controlling as many of these vertical positions as possible. Because if you don't, and the enemy does, they're just going to shoot you to pieces when you try to go to ground to take an objective. And that's hypothetical, because I've only seen the Conquest map so far. One thing I will note about flanking earlier, or that I said earlier about flanking, it does seem incredibly easy to do to some degree to some of these maps, because when you look on the map and you see the roadways laid out, some of these vertical positions have nice mountain roads leading straight up to them. The faster tanks can get up there really quickly on that harder ground and can be on you almost instantaneously. So you do need to watch out for that. I have said that these vertical positions are very strong, but I think on top of that, you're going to need more than one person up there. You're going to need eyes looking out, especially at those extra paths. And when I think about it that way, it's kind of nice. I kind of appreciate that they did it that way, because if you made it so these vertical locations had only one way in or two ways in, and they were on one team's side, more or less, it would be so easy to lock that position down, and it would make it even harder to dig enemy tanks out. So, I mean, they're important, and they're not so easily defendable from direct assaults that it's just impossible. I may be proven wrong at a later date, but thus far, you take them. They're strong positions, but they can be flanked and you can be overrun, so please take them with more than one person. And that should do you well, I think. Now I'm going to do a flyover here with my Ju-88. This is the same game. My F2 was eventually wiped out. And again, it's almost comical how the raised area the tank conflict takes place on is so nice and clear cut. You can see it just in the middle of this forest like magic. I don't know about the actual location. I'm kind of interested to look up this actual location now and see the accuracy of it, because a lot of comments I was seeing earlier when the patch came out was that this wasn't really accurate for the location. I don't know. I think it's a really nice map, and I think it's a nice change, but I mean, I think accuracy should still be accounted for to some degree. Now, as you can see, I'm taking heavy flak, and I'm trying to put my sight down on these vertical locations. But my flyby time is very short, and the flak is very heavy, and if I stay level, they're going to knock me out. Now, the problem I have, other than this short flyby time and the very vertical nature of the cover, which means even if I get the bombs on the target, the bombs may skip on the walls and it's still going to suck, more or less, is that the flak is not really in a position where your friendly ground units can help you with it in any way. In maps like Kuban and Ash River, although more in Kuban, and Corellia to some degree, it's very possible and sometimes very advisable for ground units to try and help out friendly aircraft if they have the time, to knock out the AAA positions that are in range of their guns, because that makes the flyby less harrowing. It allows the pilot to focus more on the issue of ground attack, and overall you get a better experience, you get a better synergy out of your ground and air forces when they help out each other like that. But you can't do that here, because so far at least the AAA positions for the most part are not in a location where tanks can attack them, or if they are way off the beaten path, and the tank has to expose themselves greatly and has to more or less ignore the objective to actually do anything about those positions. So it leaves the pilots in a very bad spot, because they're going to have the full force of the flak fire unless they go and deal with it themselves. And this is realistic mode, which means that ammo does not reload in the sky. So if you go after those AAA positions, you are making a conscious choice not to help your ground forces by and large. Now, in a longer game, I would totally say that's worth it, because then I'll have time to go back to the airfield, reload, come back in, and this time have less to worry about. But I haven't... The game I played on Carpathian so far was kind of short. Too short for that to be doable. The airfields are just far enough away that, in all honesty, by the time I got a bomber in particular down onto the field to reload and got back up in the air, the game, by all means, should be over. Especially if I was not playing as an aircraft from the get-go. It's a little different if you walk into historical battles with the sole intention of doing the aircraft thing instead of playing tanks, more or less. Because that's a whole 5, 6 or more minutes in which you have time as a pilot to make that first run, go back to the base, reload, and come back. Whereas a tank, you're playing those first 5, 6, 7, even 10 minutes as a tank. So, I don't know. For the full-timers, there are like 1 or 2 I've seen that are full-time pilots in the realistic mode for tanks. It may not be as bad as I'm making it out to be, because I'm very much a part-timer. But from what I've seen so far, it's very hard for aircraft to make a heavy impact on the game when it's reached that point where the tanks are hiding in those elevated positions. Because the flak is raining down on you, you don't have much time to get on target, and you're dealing with realistic controls, more or less, or more realistic flight models than you are in arcade, so you can't turn on a dime unless you're a certain set of Russian planes. And it's just... And let's not forget the enemy fighters that will probably be around trying to shoot you down. It's not a good thing, and it does not allow aircraft to focus effectively, in my mind. So, that is going to be it for today. This was just a quick first impression of the Carpathian Mountains for me. My opinion might change at a later date when I get a few more games in. Thus far, it has not come back up in the rotation for me, but we'll see. It's only been the first day. So, until next time, good luck out there.